No one at the Great Valley Wildlife Park in Northern California was ready for what happened that morning. The sun had just started to rise over the rolling green land when an adult female elephant named Mara went into labor. This was already unusual. She was not due for another month. Zoo staff rushed in, knowing early births almost never end well for elephants. The first calf arrived quickly. A strong female. Healthy. Loud. Heavy just as expected. Everyone let out a breath of relief. Then something went wrong. Mara pushed again and a second calf slipped onto the grass. The air changed instantly. This baby was nothing like the first. He was tiny. Shockingly tiny. He weighed just 48 pounds. An elephant calf should weigh at least 220 pounds at birth. Some weigh more. This one was barely the size of a large dog. No one spoke. Some of the staff looked away. Others stared, frozen. They had all seen this before. Not this small but close enough to know the ending. Elephant calves born this week do not survive. This was not cruelty. It was nature. The baby barely moved. His breathing was slow and shallow. His legs could not hold him up. His skin hung loose over his bones, and his trunk twitched like it did not know what to do. Mara stood up slowly. She looked down at both calves. She touched the healthy one first. Then she looked at the smaller one. She did not move closer. Instead, she turned away and focused on the stronger calf. The message was clear. The small one was on his own. That was when Ethan Cole stepped forward. Ethan was the head elephant keeper at the park. He was 58 years old and had spent most of his life working with large animals. Elephants, bison, rhinos. He had seen births, deaths, and everything in between. He knew the rules. Do not interfere unless there is a real chance. This baby had almost none. Still, Ethan could not take his eyes off the calf. The tiny elephant tried to lift his head. He failed and let out a soft sound. Not a cry. More like a breath asking for help. Ethan felt his chest tighten. He knelt down slowly and placed his hand near the calf, not touching, just close enough for the baby to feel warmth. "I've never seen one this small," he said quietly. The vet beside him shook her head. "He won't last the day," she replied. "Even if we take him inside, his organs may not be ready. His lungs are too weak." The park director arrived moments later. He listened, nodded once and made the hard call. "We let nature take its course," he said. "We cannot save them all." Ethan had said those same words to others many times before. But this time they felt wrong. The calf moved again. His eyes opened for a moment. Dark. White. Alive. Something broke inside Ethan. He stood up, straightened his shoulders and said something no one expected. "I'm not leaving him out here." Every head turned. The director stared at him. "Ethan, you know this won't end well." "I know," Ethan said. "But I won't let him die alone." Silence spread across the field. Ethan carefully wrapped the tiny calf in a warm blanket and lifted him with both arms. The calf was so light it shocked him. As Ethan carried the baby away from the herd, many believed they were watching a goodbye. No one imagined this choice would change everything. Ethan carried the tiny elephant to the medical building at the edge of the park. Every step felt heavier than the last, not because of the weight but because of what he knew. Most calves this small did not survive the first few hours. Inside the room was kept warm. Soft lights. Clean blankets. Quiet. The baby elephant was placed on thick padding to protect his fragile body. His breathing was uneven. His skin felt cold even under the blankets. The vet team worked fast, checking his heart, his lungs, his blood sugar. The results were not good. His body was underdeveloped. His muscles were weak. His stomach could not digest milk on its own. If he tried to drink normally, it could kill him. Ethan listened carefully. He did not argue. He did not deny the truth. But he stayed. The calf was given fluids through a thin tube. Special milk was prepared, mixed slowly and carefully. Feeding had to be done every 90 minutes. Day and night. Missing one feeding could end everything. Ethan volunteered to stay with the calf through the night. Most people assumed he would leave after a few hours. He did not. He sat on the floor beside the calf, watching every small movement. When the baby's chest rose, Ethan relaxed. When it slowed, his heart raced. The calf was given a name. Lumo. The name meant light. A small one but still there. The first night was brutal. Lumo's body temperature dropped twice. Each time, Ethan wrapped him tighter and held warm packs close to his chest. At one point, Lumo stopped moving for several seconds. Ethan did not sleep. By morning, Lumo was still alive. That alone surprised everyone. News spread quietly through the park. Staff came by to look through the glass. No one spoke much. They had seen false hope before. The second day was worse. Lumo rejected one feeding. His breathing became shallow again. His heart rate slowed. The vet warned Ethan that his organs might shut down at any moment. Still, Ethan stayed. He cleaned Lumo's skin with warm cloths, copying what mother elephants do to help circulation. He adjusted the blankets. He kept notes of every breath, every twitch. Late that night, something changed. Lumo lifted his head for the first time. It was not much, just a few inches, but it was real. His trunk moved, weak and unsure, and brushed against Ethan's arm. That small touch changed everything. The next morning, Lumo's temperature held steady without extra heat for the first time. His breathing became more regular. He accepted a full feeding through the tube. The vet team could not explain it fully. They only said one thing was clear. He was fighting. By the end of the third day, Lumo survived longer than anyone expected. Staff who once shook their heads now paused longer at the window. Some still said it would not last. Others began to hope. Ethan did not celebrate. He knew better. The hardest days were still ahead. But for the first time since Lumo was born, the smallest elephant anyone had ever seen was no longer fading. He was holding on. By the end of the first week, Lumo was still alive. That fact alone felt unreal. He was still much smaller than any elephant his age should be. His legs shook when he tried to move. Most of the time he stayed lying down, saving energy. But his eyes were brighter now. They followed movement. They reacted to sound. That was new. Ethan finally went home for a few hours each night, but he never really rested. He kept his phone beside him, volume high, ready to rush back if anything went wrong. During the day, a young animal care specialist named Hannah Rivera began helping with Lumo's care. She was calm, focused, and careful with every step. She adjusted the milk mix, added small nutrients, and tracked Lumo's weight down to the smallest change. At first, the work between Ethan and Hannah was silent. They spoke only about feeding times and health signs. Then one afternoon, Lumo surprised them both. He pushed himself upright. His legs bent and shook, but they held. For 3 full seconds, Lumo stood. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Hannah covered her mouth without meaning to. When Lumo dropped back onto the padding, no one laughed. No one spoke. They both knew how big that moment was. From that day on, progress came slowly, but it came. Lumo began taking milk from a bottle instead of the tube. He learned to curl his trunk around it, clumsy but determined. Every feeding took patience. Some ended in spills. Some ended in frustration. But Lumo kept trying. The park director noticed the change. So did the staff who once avoided looking. People began stopping Ethan in the hallways, asking questions. Asking how Lumo was doing. Some brought ideas. Others brought quiet encouragement. Not everyone agreed with what Ethan was doing. A few senior staff said it was a waste of time. That Lumo would grow too attached to humans. That even if he survived, he would never live a normal elephant life. Ethan heard them. He understood their concern. But every morning, when Lumo lifted his head and made a soft sound the moment Ethan entered the room, those doubts faded. At 2 weeks old, Lumo gained his first full pound. Then another. It did not sound like much, but for him it was huge. His skin grew tighter. His trunk became stronger. He began tapping objects near him, curious about everything. One afternoon, the door to the care room was left open while Ethan cleaned supplies. Lumo scooted forward, slow and awkward but determined. He wanted out. Ethan froze when he saw it. He did not stop him. Lumo reached the doorway and felt the cool air. He lifted his trunk and let out a small sound that almost sounded like pride. That moment spread fast through the park. Photos were taken, carefully and quietly. No noise. No stress. By the end of the month, the story reached beyond the park. A local news site ran a short piece. The smallest elephant calf ever recorded is still alive. The reaction was immediate. Messages came in from across the country. From animal lovers. From vets. From people who just needed something good to believe in. Donations followed. The park, which had been struggling for years, suddenly had breathing room. But with attention came pressure. Some people wanted to see Lumo up close. Some wanted to touch him. Others wanted to use his story to draw crowds. Ethan said no to all of it. Lumo was not a show. He was still fragile. And there was another problem growing quietly in the background. Lumo had never been with another elephant. He was surviving. But he was alone. By the time Lumo was 3 months old, his body had grown stronger, but a new worry began to take shape. He followed humans with his eyes. He reacted to their voices. He reached his trunk toward Ethan and Hannah for comfort. That was dangerous. Elephants are not meant to grow up with people as their family. Ethan knew this better than anyone. If Lumo did not learn how to be an elephant, all their hard work would fail in the end. The park had other elephants, but introducing Lumo to them was risky. He was still much smaller. One wrong move from a full-grown elephant could end everything. After weeks of planning, they tried anyway. A special enclosure was set up. Strong barriers. Wide spaces. No direct contact at first. Lumo was guided into the area, his steps slow but curious. On the other side stood Reina, a calm older female elephant who had lived at the park for many years. She had lost calves before. She knew loss. At first, Reina ignored him. Lumo stood still, unsure. Then he made a soft sound and reached his trunk through the gap. Reina stopped. She turned. Slowly, carefully, she stepped closer. The first touch was gentle. Just the tip of her trunk against his. Ethan held his breath. Nothing bad happened. Over the next days they repeated the meetings. Short at first. Then longer. Reina began standing closer. Lumo leaned toward her without fear. One morning something changed. When Lumo entered the space, Reina moved toward him at once. She wrapped her trunk around his small body, not tight, just enough to pull him close. Lumo relaxed against her. That was the moment Ethan knew. Lumo had found his own kind. From then on, Ethan stepped back. He still watched. He still cared. But he no longer rushed in first. That was harder than staying up all night. As Lumo spent more time with Reina, his behavior shifted. He copied her movements. He learned when to eat, when to rest, when to explore. He became more confident. Visitors were allowed to see Lumo now, but only from far away through quiet viewing areas. No crowds. No noise. People did not complain. When they saw Lumo walking beside Reina, they understood. The park opened a small education space nearby. It focused on elephant life, habitat loss, and how early care can change outcomes. Lumo's story became part of something bigger. Still, one big question remained. What would happen to Lumo in the long run? He was alive. He was growing. But he was still much smaller than other elephants his age. Some experts said he would always be at risk. Others believed his mind was his strength. At 6 months old, Lumo surprised everyone again. A young deer slipped through a broken fence and wandered into the elephant area. Staff rushed to respond, afraid the elephants would panic. They did not. Lumo walked toward the deer slowly. He stopped a few feet away and lowered his head. He stood still, calm. The deer stopped running. Moments later, Lumo turned and walked toward the open gate. The deer followed. Staff watched in silence as the deer exited safely. No training. No commands. Just instinct. That single moment changed how people looked at Lumo. He was not just surviving. He was becoming something special. And soon, another decision would test everything they had built. When Lumo turned 1 year old, the park faced its hardest decision yet. He was healthy. Still small but strong. He ran, played, and stayed close to Reina like a true calf should. His body was about half the size of other elephants his age, but his energy never stopped. The question was no longer if he would live. It was where he should live. Keeping Lumo at the park forever would be safe but limited. Releasing him fully into the wild was too dangerous. His size could make him a target. His past with humans could put him at risk. After months of talks with wildlife experts, a plan was made. Lumo and a small group of elephants, including Reina, would move to a protected reserve in Oregon. The land was huge, open, and closely monitored. No crowds. No shows. Just space, grass, water, and other animals. It was as close to the wild as possible without putting Lumo in danger. The move took weeks to prepare. On the final morning, Ethan stood quietly as Lumo was guided into the transport area. The elephant paused when he saw Ethan. He stepped closer and gently touched Ethan's arm with his trunk. Ethan did not move. He did not need to. Lumo turned and walked on. Months passed. Reports from the reserve were good. Lumo stayed with the herd. He learned routes, water spots, and social rules. He was careful, calm, and often stood between younger animals and danger. Then came unexpected news. One of the females in the group was pregnant. Tests confirmed it. Lumo was the father. The smallest elephant ever recorded had grown up. 2 years after the move, Ethan visited the reserve for the first time. From a quiet viewing area, he saw Lumo in the distance. Taller now. Stronger. Still smaller than most, but confident. Beside him stood a newborn calf. Healthy. Steady. Full of life. The staff had named her Nova. Ethan watched as Lumo stayed close to her, gentle and alert. He did not step forward. He did not need to. Lumo had his own life now. On the drive home, Ethan thought about that first morning. The silence. The doubt. the tiny body that should not have survived. One choice had changed everything. Not because it broke nature, but because it gave nature a chance. Lumo's story spread far beyond the park and the reserve. It reminded people that size does not decide worth. That care matters. That hope can grow even when it starts small. And somewhere on a wide, open land, the smallest elephant ever seen walked forward, carrying that hope with him.